breath.
From the Freedom Compound at Gaze, Illinois, home of the historic two-story outhouse, it's TO's Restoring the Republic podcast, a broadcast, if you will, featuring truth, information, and constitutional solutions for the American people. Hey, everybody, I'm TO Tom Olmstead, and my co-hosts I want to bring in right now, they don't need any introduction. You might know who they are. But if you don't, it's Jack and Margie Flynn, and they're in their privacy of their southern bunker somewhere deep in the American
Yes.
South. Jack,
Yes.
Margie, how's
Greetings.
the world
Theo.
treating you?
Good
Pretty
to
well,
see you.
Tom. How are you?
Well, I'm doing
Everything's
all right.
fine.
We've got some rain coming through. So if you hear thunderstorms going on, folks, just I'm not going to wash away. You know, somebody told me I crap floats, right? So I'm going to be all right. But in any event, I thought this is the inaugural. I'm going to call it broadcast, guys. Is that okay? Because I'm an old radio
That's
guy,
fine.
That's fine with
and
us, Tom.
let's kind of tell the folks why we're doing this show. Let's kind of give them a brief overview of who you are and who I am and why we're doing what we're doing. You guys want to start? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Margie.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. The reason that the three of us are sitting face to face, so to speak, and talking is because we want to share with our fellow American citizens, our American brothers and sisters on the land and soil, the true status of the American Republic right now, which is in very, very much dire danger. We want to share with people that there are solutions to all the problems that are facing our country. And we want to let the people know that it's only the people that can bring our republic back to her full form and glory. Because no one in public service today, and I put that in quotes, is operating under the original organic 1787 National Constitution and her Bill of Rights from 1791. We, as a people, have been duped and led to believe that we are being served by the officials that we put into office routinely. But in fact, we are not, because they serve another entity. They serve a loyalty to the corporation and to the dark entities that are behind that huge corporation, who is not in operation to serve the rights and the best interests of the American people, but only for itself and its greedy masters. This is important that you folks know this so that we can wipe away any misconceptions, any lack of knowledge about who we are and what we are. We are Americans. We are sovereign in our being. We were born sovereign. And when our country broke away from England, at least theoretically, even the king at the time, King George III, when he signed off on the colonies, said that he was giving his sovereignty to the people of America, not to the machinery of government and the functionaries that run the machinery for us. It's very important to keep that in mind because we're standing in our own right, in our sovereign right, and we have rights that are inherent to us, like our breath is, that we get from our Creator. And no matter how you see the Creator, how you term him or her or it, we are all the children of this Creator. And it's our duty, our sacred duty as living, breathing men and women on this beautiful land and soil to stand up for what is right, for what is just. And in our view, that cannot be done unless you have a full comprehension and understanding of our original Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the intentions of the genuine founding fathers who wanted to create a country that was ruled by the people in a self-governing manner under the rule of law. And that rule of law is the Constitution for the United States of America. And it is the supreme law. That means it stands above everything else in this country, above the millions of statutes and codes, regulations and rules and policies that are being used every day in governments that pretend to be your servants, when in fact they are for-profit corporations running the show for their own profit, their own benefit, their own greed, and their own position and influence. This has to stop, but it won't stop until the people recognize the true state that we're in right now, that our republic still exists, but it's been overshadowed by the corporation. Yeah. And it's up to us to expose that and to use our divine intelligence and our divine rights. And the instrument for that process is our national constitution. Jack, you want to add something?
Margie and I have been doing this for a very long time. I've been doing it for well over 70 years. Margie's been doing it for over 60 years. And what we use is the supreme law of the land. In every case, in every argument, and every appearance before government, we only use the Constitution. I don't know if anyone else in the country except our own people. Tom uses the Constitution. Our people use the Constitution. I don't know of anyone else in the country who uses our supreme law to win victories against corrupt governments in this country. Now, if you folks know of anyone, and I say this in every podcast we ever appeared on forever, let us know, because we would like to speak to that person or those people who let us know about their experiences. Now, America was founded as a constitutional republic, all right? A constitutional republic is the rule of the supreme law, which is the Constitution, not the rule of man, which are the statutes, codes, rules, and regulations. Our whole country has been overshadowed by a corporation, okay, called the U.S. Corporation, founded in 1871. It overshadowed the whole nation, all the states in the nation, all the states, all the cities, all the towns, all the police departments, with very few exceptions in this country, are corporations, okay? The politicians that you elect to government serve the corporation. They don't serve you, and they never have, okay? The entities who rule this country are extreme evil. I would call them satanic, demonic, because they do satanic and demonic things. And we as a free people, as theoretically free people, cannot allow that to happen. And Margie and I have been fighting this for a long time. Tom has been fighting this. He's more recent than we are, but he's fighting it. He's been very successful in defeating these bastards. Okay, and that's exactly what they are. They are evil. They are not good. They support the dark side, not the light side. The light side is the Constitution. The dark side are the many, many rules and regulations imposed upon us that are contrary to the Constitution. So the purpose of this program is to wake the American people up and tell the American people the truth, because frankly, they've never been told the truth. Now, yeah, there are the facets of truth they've heard from time to time. But most of the information presented to this people, this American people, by this American government from the very beginning, and I go back to the very beginning, well, we're not going to get into that today, but from the very beginning, we have been lied to, okay? And we have to recognize that a liar consistently lies. And anyone who believes a liar is a little disturbed, okay? To believe a liar doesn't make any sense, because you know he's a proven liar. So our purpose here is to wake the American people up to use the Constitution to restore constitutional governance in this America, which is and has been our purpose for a very long time. I concede to you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Well said, guys. And I've only been on this journey, let's call it a journey, since maybe 2019, about the time the CV-19 hoax was coming through. That's when the blinders really came off for me. That's when I knew full-throated that that was a hoax. There was something afoot. Then we had the stolen election of 2020, and I was really awake, and I'm starting to absorb all this information and whatnot on everything under the sun, because at that time, then I realized, hey, something's really wrong here. What we've been told is not the truth. None of this jives with what's going on. So about 2020, I got on a journey, and I got a lot of good information from a lot of people, folks. A lot of the state national people who I originally fell in with. Don't really want to mention their names. It's not important. They had a lot of great information, but the remedies that they had, their solutions, were not rooted enough in constitutional principles. They were more rooted in, hey, send me $80 and I'll give you a thumb drive with my documents. We're not selling anything here. The Flynn's have never sold anything. They've worked, as he just said, for decades for fun and for free out of love for this great country to share the message and carry the message of the constitutional republic. And the only remedy that you and I have to restoring this great nation is by lawfully and peacefully picking up the toolbox that we've got, which they don't have, by the way. They've taken an oath to uphold it. That's where we got them, but they don't use it, but we do. So I'm just an old crank, white-headed crank from Gaze, Illinois, a town with a two-story outhouse, you know. So I'm a nobody from nowhere. I'm recent to this bandwagon, but I got lucky one day, folks. I was scrolling on, I don't know, TikTok, YouTube, doesn't matter, and I came across this podcast. Came up on my feed from a guy named Mel Carmine. He's the guy with the rose-colored glasses that sits in the big velvet heart-shaped chair. He's a big XRP guy. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but he had these two folks on there. And Jack at the time was talking about the Act of England 1871, what he mentioned a minute ago. And I already knew something about 1871 and the fact that our government at all levels now were corporations masquerading outside the constitutional republic. So it perked my interest. And I got listening to these folks. And before you know it, I'm jumping on their website. And then I think I reached out to you, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
I'm thinking I did.
You
And
did.
I want to pull this up right now while we're thinking about it, while we're talking about it. This is the website for Jack and Margie Flynn, Citizens of the American Constitution. And I went to this website and I actually reached out to him because I had something going on locally with a neighboring municipality. They were trying to tell me I'm an investor. I make my living now, folks, with rental property, but I'm a trained broadcaster. I've been a contractor for years and years and years. God has blessed me with so many skills. I'm so thankful every day that of the gifts that I have been given, and it's all through the grace of God for me. I'm a recovered alcoholic of almost 30 years, and that in and of itself was the impetus for a new life. But anyway, I went to their website and I got to know these folks a little bit. And if you go to their website, citizensoftheamericanconstitution.net, I'm sure you can probably see the URL up there. Everything you need to know is right here when it comes to all things constitutional. Now, I got to look around here. I got to look around my screen, but they have a constitutional teaching series here. They've got videos that can help. They've got the organic Constitution and the Bill of Rights, 1787 and 1791. Everything that you need is right here, and especially in video form, which makes it kind of nice. When we're out and about living our lives, doing our thing, we can throw we can throw the audio or we can throw the video on and kind of, get a little idea of what we need to know and how we need to know it. But that's where Jack and Margie Flynn are right there. And if you don't have this website, bookmark, whatever they call bookmarked or thumbnailed, you might want to get it, because if you're going to watch this program going forward, week over week, you're going to have to find a resource where you can actually go look on some of the stuff that we talk about. And that's a good place to start right there. So I'm just a guy from Central Illinois. I wasn't educated to be any kind of a politician or anything of the sort. I'm just an American citizen who knows who I am and what I am. And now I know what the law is, and I know who the enemy is. And those four things I didn't know 6 years ago. Okay. And Margie, we've talked about this 100 times, and you say it perfectly, that the American people are under a spell, right?
Yes, absolutely. They're under a spell and they don't realize it. And it's not their fault, even though sometimes it feels like it is their fault, because they've been attacked on every level to have their minds sort of warped and programmed and trained into thinking a certain way and to being almost incapable of thinking any other way because they're blocked. This literally is an energetic block on them. And it's difficult to get this point across to people because they feel attacked. And we're not attacking you, the people. We're attacking the entities behind the scenes that are doing this to the people. They've attacked our education system and they've basically crushed it. They're using all sorts of weapons by poisoning our food, our air, our water. Virtually everything that they touch, they spoil because they're spoilers, they're destroyers. And so the human mind is really under attack right now. And the heart and soul is under attack too, because there's so much pain and suffering in the world. There's so much lack or perception of lack that the people are focused very narrowly on just trying to survive. And what little time they have left over, they want to entertain themselves. They don't want to learn something. They don't have to study. They don't have to go back to school. So we have to break that spell. We have to crush that false illusion and let the people know that they have it in them. They always have it in them to want freedom. They have it in them to want to be righteous and just. That is, if they are people with a real soul and a living spirit dwelling in that soul. Those are the people we're reaching out to, because anybody that doesn't have that genuine soul, that isn't connected to the divine, they're already lost. We can't help them, but we can help you folks who do have a soul and who are still in touch with that spiritual aspect of yourself, because that's the divine in us. And that divine is calling to us, wake up and start living the way godly people live. And that first and foremost has to be free. It has to be just. It has to be in integrity and honor, and have love for yourself and love for your fellow man. If you follow those principles, no one would ever want to harm anyone or steal from anyone or do anything untoward. That's the center of the focus, that we have to get back to our true self, our spirit self, and grow from there. And our Constitution, remember, our founders they were godly men in that they believed in a creator. They brought the Constitution about to expand on what they saw were the important aspects of life, and that's justice, equality, freedom, integrity, all of those things. So that's the place that we're coming from. That's the place that Tom is coming from. We're not coming from vengeance. We're not coming from trying to make anybody look bad. We're coming from a place of truth to awaken the people, break the spell, and empower them to use the gifts that God has given them to free themselves and to restore our country to constitutional justice.
Exactly. And, you folks have thousands and thousands of students that you've helped over the years, and I'm one of those. Now, you don't do work for them. We don't, the purpose of this is not so we can make money. There's no money here to be made.
No.
What we're trying to do is, now that doesn't mean Jack and Margie won't take donations. Of course they will. But this is how they help me, and this is their approach, and this is our approach. Hey, we're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to do work for you. It's more along the lines of, look, if we were in your situation, this is what we would do. And that's how they approached me. And I was able to win my first case against that municipality that tried to tell me I couldn't have a short-term rental. That didn't set well with me. And then I had 4 other cases in the local court here that were all right to travel cases. 4 that ended up with dismissals, okay, on constitutional grounds. Why? Because I'm Clarence Darrow? No, because I'm not Clarence Darrow, right? I use the power and authority of the Constitution, and these folks showed me how to do it and how I needed to proceed and what I wanted to do and what I shouldn't do. And guys, it all boils down to what we're talking about today. We need to know what the law really is. We need to know who the enemy is. We need to know who we are, and we need to know what we are. So let's start real quick. Let's just jump into something real quick. And we try to keep our podcast, folks, to somewhere around 45 minutes. So it's not going to be a terribly long broadcast each week. That way, you've got time to still live your life. But guys, this is what the framers called this. Well, they didn't call it that, but this is what's commonly been called as the supremacy clause in the Constitution. It's Article 6, Clause 2. And I want to read it, and then I want you guys to touch on it, because everything about the Constitution is basically embroiled right here. This is the nuts and bolts. This is the crux. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all the treaties made, which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state are bound thereby. Anything in this Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary, notwithstanding, all one word, that's a legal term, doesn't have any standing, so it's void. So there's a ton to unpack right there. And that tells you everything we need to know about what the law is and what the law isn't. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This says it very clearly. This is the Supremacy Clause. It declares the Constitution of 1787 as the supreme law of the land, amended with a Bill of Rights in 1791. All politicians, all government officers take an oath to this Constitution, all of them. They are bound by oath to this Constitution. There is not one jurisdiction in this country, not one. If you, I don't care where you live in America, your jurisdiction does not uphold this Constitution. The public officers in your jurisdiction do not uphold this Constitution. They uphold the corporate Constitution of 1871 that overshadowed our original Constitution. Okay? So all of these people are bound by oath to the Constitution, and all laws must be made in pursuance of the Constitution. Now, under the corporate Constitution of 1871 and the corporation that established this new venue, all of your public officers only pay attention to the corporate laws, rules, and regulations that start with the original legislatures in each state, okay? So each state will pass unconstitutional laws, give it to the governor. The governor will sign the unconstitutional laws into actual law, and both the legislature and the governor, the two branches of government that just committed treason, now expect the courts to uphold these unconstitutional laws, and the courts do. And that's the bottom line. That's what you have in this country. And we have broken that. We, Tom, and our people, our thousands of people, our students have broken this. And as far as we know, we're the only people in the country, the only groups in the country that have done this. And as I've said before, if you know anyone in the country using the Constitution to defeat unconstitutional governance, let us know. Go ahead, Dave.
I just want to add a point here. We speak of the word law, but if you go down to clause 3, you'll realize that the only governmental legislation that can actually be termed law, valid law, are legislations that are made in pursuance of this Constitution, upholding in this section, meaning that the Constitution for the United States of America is the supreme law. And when legislatures pass legislation that defies that Constitution in any way, that legislation does not have the merits of real law. So it is lawfully, it is not a valid law and cannot apply to American citizens. This is something people don't understand, because when they get, say, stopped for a traffic violation, an offense, it's not really a crime because there's no victim, but it's an offense in their jargon. They throw a statute and a code at you, and they say you violated such and such, such and such. Well, wait a minute. That so-called law, that statute, most often violates rights that are guaranteed to us in our national Constitution's Bill of Rights. So if a statute, a code, violates any of our rights, that can't be a valid law because it goes against the premises and the protections of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. This is something that every American should know. It's something that every public official, every police officer, every bureaucrat should know, because they deal with people's circumstances in their lives every day. But they don't know, or they don't care. It's a combination in some cases, because they walked away from fealty to the Constitution a long time ago. They
Yeah.
have been put under a spell too. They're brainwashed to think that their
Yeah.
corporate administrative system is everything. These for-profit corporations, and that's what they are, and you can even look them up on Dun and Bradstreet, they're for-profit. Right. They don't have any lawful authority to be acting as a government for anything in this country. Governments were ordained under our Constitution, and there's no authority in that Constitution that says that governments can be for-profit corporations and operate by basically robbing the people day in and day night with all of their rules and regulations and restrictions and limitations and so forth. And whenever they do this, they always say, well, it's for your own good, it's for your safety, it's for public safety, whatever. Hokum, nonsense. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the cash register going ding, ding, ding.
Yep.
And those of us who figured it out a long time ago said, excuse me, you can't do that because I have rights. My rights are God-given. You didn't give them to me. Not even the Constitution gave them to me. The Constitution recognized those rights and enshrined them, protected them in the Bill of Rights so that we would have these protections in black and white whenever some miscreant operating as a public official says, you can't do such and such. And I say, yes, I can. My rights protected. Here it is right under there. So when people don't know what those rights are, it's very easy for them to be deceived by the actions of public officers.
Right.
And when you know what they're doing is wrong, and you don't say something, that's on you.
It's on you.
This is where education comes in. This is where comprehension and understanding, meaning standing under, okay? And that's another point, just one quick point I want to make. The Constitution was created by the people. So we, the people, are above the Constitution, just as our Creator is above us. Beneath that Constitution is the system of government the Constitution created and allows and mandates. And under that fall all the public officials, police officers, judges, clerks, mayors, whatever, they all fall under that. And that means they are bound by oath to this Constitution. And as you can see here in this section right here, it says the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures, that means your state, and all executive and judicial offices, executive meaning governors, presidents, things like that, both of the United States and of the several states shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. That is very, very important because they have a duty, a sacred, sworn, or affirmed duty to uphold that oath. And when they don't, when they go against the Constitution, they perjure that oath and they vacate their office. They are no longer fit to hold the office or to receive public funds. And we can get to that later on.
I want to just follow that up briefly, okay? People will say, fine, that's good. So what do I do? Well, you can do what we've done forever, okay? And what Tom has done and what our people have done forever. When you go to court, before you go to court, we write affidavits to the entity who bothered us. Let's say it was a cop, for instance, okay? Such as the cops who stopped and brutalized Tom. We would write them.
Which time?
Yeah,
every time. Every time.
Times.
As happens to people all across the country,
You
Tom.
bet.
It's unbelievable. These cops are nothing but Bolsheviks, okay? Now, there are nice cops here and there,
Sure.
but the vast majority of them are Bolsheviks. They're no damn good. So what we do is write affidavits based on constitutional principles, okay, to this cop. And we tell him that he's committed unconstitutional actions against us. And by committing those unconstitutional actions against us, he acted in rebellion to the Constitution, which is treason.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, he committed treason against a citizen who was exercising his rights guaranteed in the Constitution, which this cop stopped immediately, okay? We not only write to the cop, all right? Once we send the affidavit to the cop, we send copies of that to every person who is in the supervisory and oversight position in that county or city, meaning the mayor, the city council, whatever, okay? And in a side note, we say, look, this is what took place by a cop acting under your watch and under your supervision. He committed treason against the Constitution, our republic, and me by his unconstitutional actions. You either take action against this cop or you are condoning and abetting and participating in this treason. Okay. And that usually gets some heads rolling very quickly. Then, when we go to court, if the cop doesn't rebut anything we've said, we have a clause in there that says if you disagree with anything we stated in this affidavit, then rebut that with which you disagree and support your rebuttal, okay, by constitutional positions. Well, he can't. How the hell do you support an unconstitutional position with a constitutional position? We and our people have written well over 100,000 affidavits, not one rebuttal,
Ever.
not one to over 100,000 affidavits. I mean, come on. We go to court. There's been no rebuttal. The judge calls the court to order, okay, and he'll look at the idiot, the prosecutor, the state's attorney, whoever is speaking for the system, and then he'll come to me or Margie, whoever is speaking for our position. Mr. Flynn, are you ready to proceed? No, sir, not at this moment. There are a couple of matters we must discuss before we go further. And I have that right under due process of law. And if the fool sitting on the bench doesn't know us, he'll say, go right ahead. We say, with all due respect, you and the prosecuting attorney have taken oaths to the national constitution and must abide by those oaths in the performance of your professional duties, especially those before this honorable court. Now, I just made a statement. I didn't ask a question. I made a statement. It's based in truth, fact, valid law, and evidence, and you can look it up, okay? Then I asked the confirming question to the statement, is that correct? And most of these guys will say yes. And as soon as they say yes, we win our case. Why? Because they are required to uphold the Constitution. They're required to uphold the fact that this cop didn't rebut our affidavit by means of his own sworn and notarized affidavit, thus admitted to all of the crimes and unconstitutional actions we stated in that affidavit against him, okay? And we win our case very, very quickly because we force the constitutional issue. So that's the difference between us and our people and why we win and why the vast majority of people, even though they're good people who want to try and do the right thing, they unfortunately use the wrong means and they lose very quickly. So this session and this program, which will continue for a long time, we hope, is based in and on the Constitution, and we will show you how you can use it to win anything. Go ahead.
That's the whole crux of the deal, isn't it?
Yes.
Because that's the one thing that we use that they don't. And that's where you get them. Like we talked about a second ago.
Yep.
Clause 2, the supremacy clause, binds the judge. Clause 3 binds every other public servant that you know, including the cops, your lawyers, your executives, your legislature, your representatives, your senators, your local supervisor of assessments, the dog catcher, okay,
Right.
all the way down. It binds these, anybody that's in public office has to take the oath. They have to take it, folks, because it's given in exchange by the people for the public trust. And here's the deal. Okay, Joe Blow, public servant, Mr. Judge, Mr. Attorney, whoever, if you're going to be granted this delegated authority to serve in the public sphere, then you have to take this oath that you're going to uphold my rights. That's basically in common, just as bottom line as you can get it. That's what the oath of office is. And as you know, guys, I've been to court, a couple different courts here recently within the last year, year and a half, where two of the prosecutors, these clowns didn't even have an oath.
Why don't you tell the audience about the letter you got from the Secretary of State, which is rather amazing because that's very rare, and the letter you got from the state's attorney, which is also very rare. And the fact that you get all your money back.
Well, see, just to kind of set the stage is I had a couple of run-ins with the local cops here, two different cases. I'm a big right to travel guy, and I started traveling without a driver's license. And we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of the right to travel because that's a whole nother discussion, and we'll be here until tomorrow. But bottom line is I got pulled over on two separate occasions 2 weeks apart, and I received tickets in each case for no driver's license, no registration, no proof of insurance. Okay. Well, once they got me the first time, now they're looking for me, right? So I get pulled over 2 weeks later, same charges, different cop. So now I got two court hearings coming up pretty close. Well, when it came time to go to court, I didn't know so the things that I know now. And I couldn't go to court because I was incarcerated in another court for having the audacity to bust the judge on her oath of office. And she threw me in jail for 14 days for contempt because this is what they do sometimes when they don't know what to do. They throw you in jail until they can figure out what to do. See, but in any event, from jail, I paid the fines on those two cases. Well, about 6 months later, I get stopped a third time in this city. Now they're laying for me, right, folks? Old TO, that you know what doesn't have a driver's license. By this time, the Secretary of State has suspended my driver's license. I'm always curious how you suspend something you don't have. But in any event, the state of Illinois suspended my driver's license. I got pulled over just because they knew who I was. They knew I didn't have a license. So they cited me for driving on a suspended, no insurance, no registration. So I went to court on this one. And by this time, I'm embroiled in the constitutional solutions from Jack and Margie Flynn. So I do certain things, right? I know who I am. I know what I am. I know who the enemy is, and I know what the law is. I've got my affidavits in place. See, that affidavit that Jack is talking about is an unrebutted affidavit, which, if you know anything about maxims in law, the unrebutted affidavit stands as truth in fact in any court in this land. Okay. An unrebutted affidavit is just, hey, they didn't answer it back with their own. So through their binding tacit agreement, they're agreeing that what I said was true. So before I showed up, I filed my affidavits. I did a motion to dismiss based on constitutional reasons, right? With the affidavits attached. And then I also filed a challenge of jurisdiction. Because what you're going to learn from us, folks, is if you had to go to court, and my suggestion is stay the hell out of there if you can. But if you had to go, you're not going to enter a plea. You're going to appear by special appearance, and we'll get into all this later, not general. You're not going to grant jurisdiction to the court by saying I'm guilty or not guilty. Once you enter a plea, then you're agreeing to participate.
Right.
No, sir, I'm not here to enter a plea, Judge. Sir, I'm here to challenge the jurisdiction, something along those lines. So those documents are already in place. The affidavits are before I even show up. And what ended up happening, long story short, is I got thrown in jail again for contempt because I argued with the judge. See, you got to learn how to walk the line a little bit. You got to learn when to push and when not to push.
And you didn't.
So, sometimes you got to learn things the hard way.
Yeah.
So I did a 20-day stretch for contempt, but when I got out, I was their new best buddy. So the next hearing, not only did they dismiss the charges of driving on suspended, no valid license, no registration, and no tags, but they vacated those other two judgments. Remember, I already paid the fines. They vacated those other two judgments, returned my money to me, and it's on your website as one of your,
Yes.
examples
That's right.
of recent wins.
Yep.
And then the Secretary of State's office recognized this and rescinded the suspension and all the thing that they had. And now I've since gotten a driver's license, not because I need it, but there's various reasons why I went ahead and did that we'll talk about it another time when we talk about a right to travel. But the bottom line here is this: when you use the Constitution and you claim it and exercise it, the claim and exercise of a constitutional right, according to the United States Supreme Court in Miller versus United States, cannot be converted into a crime. Okay, even though they do it all the time. even though they did that to me by throwing me in jail. There's also Miranda versus Arizona. Constitutional rights are involved. Rulemaking and legislation cannot be enacted that would abrogate my rights. I mean, on and on and on. Um, so that's how you win. That's how I did it. When I say I really mean we. That's how we did it. And that's how we're going to do it going forward, using the power and authority of the Constitution, because there isn't any other way.
No.
There isn't any other way to do it. Just real quick, guys, before we run out of time, I wanted to also touch just real quick, if I may, on what the difference between a U.S. citizen is. This goes to who we are and what we are. What the difference of a U.S. citizen is as opposed to the American citizen. And if we could just talk about that real quick. There's two United States Supreme Court cases, as you guys know. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the folks out there in broadcast land. So when the 14th Amendment came along in 1868, it was in response to the fact that our black brothers and sisters didn't have any constitutional pathway to become citizens. So they create this 14th Amendment. But before that, a few years before that, back in 1857, there was a case called Dred Scott versus Sanford. Some of you might have heard about Dred Scott. He was the slave who was freed in the 1850s. He moves to Rock Island, Illinois, says, "Hey, I want to have citizenship." He starts suing. Well, he starts losing. And the Dred Scott case gets bounced all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States in 1857. Now, why am I telling you this? Because the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at that time was a guy named Roger B. Taney. And by the way, this comes from Brandon Williams's website, so I'm using his document here. This was information on his site, so I'm sure he probably won't care. But he does a good job of providing the information. Taney, in the majority opinion, and that court agreed, by the way, 7-2 in favor that Dred Scott couldn't get citizenship. But you got to transport yourself back to the 1850s, okay? The whole thing is racist on its face, right? But again, don't kill the messenger. That this is where we come from. But I want you to listen to the words of Roger B. Taney in his majority opinion when he talks about the people and persons. The words people of the United States and citizens are synonymous terms. They mean the same thing. They both describe the political body who, according to our Republican institutions, form the sovereignty and who hold the power and conduct the government through their representatives. They are what we familiarly call the sovereign people, and every citizen is one of this people and a constituent member of this sovereignty. Now, before I read the next paragraph, I want you to look at something. If it's being explained that people and citizens are synonymous and mean the same thing, then the American people are sovereign citizens. They're not domestic enemies that the FBI and these law enforcement thugs are being trained to call you, when in fact it's actually them. But let's continue on real quick. The question before the court is whether this class of persons, more about that in a minute, described in the plea abatement, compose a portion of this people and are constituent members of the sovereignty. We think they are not. They are not included. They were not intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution, and therefore can claim no rights that the instrument of the Constitution provides. Okay. So that's Dred Scott. So they're just following the Constitution. There was no constitutional framework for slaves to become citizens. So you see the distinction between persons and people. We use words, guys, like persons and U.S. citizens, and we think of the common and ordinary meaning of the word. And in many cases, especially when you're dealing in legalese, they mean something totally different, don't they?
Yeah.
That's right.
So to keep going real quick, and then I'm going to let Jack and Margie in on this. There was this thing called the Civil War, which was fought not primarily over slavery. Slavery was a superfluous issue, a side issue. It was fought over aggression of the North and unfair trade and a lot of other things that we can do a whole show on sometime. But when we're talking about the citizenship, this is where this becomes pertinent. So we have the Civil War, 1865. They do the 13th Amendment. the second 13th Amendment. They outlaw involuntary servitude. And then shortly after that, some of these states were passing black code laws. They were making it impossible for black folks to be enfranchised in, and they couldn't work and this and that. So Congress reacts in 1866 with the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which morphed into the 14th Amendment. Okay, it morphed into the 14th Amendment, which is the first section that I want to bring your attention to right now, because this is explained in a United States Supreme Court case in 1873 called the Slaughterhouse Cases. Okay, because there was a lot of confusion now after the 14th Amendment. People were confused on just what the heck was going on. This is what the 14th Amendment, the first section says. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person life, liberty, or property without due process, or deny a person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. Well, people were still confused as to, what's going on. So to kind of clear this up, that's where we got the Slaughterhouse case in 1873. And the Chief Justice at that time, who gave the majority opinion, was a guy named Samuel Freeman Miller, who had spent, I guess, guys, his whole law career fighting for the rights of black folks at the time. But here's from the Slaughterhouse case. Now listen to this. The first section of the 14th article, which is the 14th Amendment, the first section, to which our attention is more specifically invited, opens with the definition of citizenship, not only citizenship of the United States, but citizenship of the states. No such definition was previously found in the Constitution, nor had any attempt been made to define it by Congress. It had been the occasion of much discussion by the courts, by the executive department, and in public journals. It has been said by eminent judges that no man was a citizen of the United States except as he was a citizen of one of the states composing the Union. Those, therefore, have been born to and reside always in the District of Columbia or in the territories through within the United States were not citizens. Okay, so it goes on to say this, and this is the part I want to get to. The first observation that we make on this clause is that puts to rest both the question which we stated to have been the subject of the differences of opinion. It declares that persons may be citizens of the United States without regard to the citizenship of a particular state, which overturns Dred Scott by making all persons born within the United States and subject to the jurisdiction citizens of the United States. That main purpose was to establish the citizenship of the Negro can admit of no doubt. And of course, the phrase subject to the jurisdictions was supposed to exclude the ministers and consuls if they have kids born here. So here's what I want you to see. The next observation is more important in a view of the arguments of counsel, the present case. It is that the distinction between the citizenship of the United States and citizenship of a state is clearly recognized and established. Not only may a man be a citizen of the United States without being a citizen of the state, but an important element is necessary to convert the former into the latter. He must reside in the state to make a citizen of it, but it is only necessary that he should be born or naturalized in the United States to be a citizen of the Union. Now, hang on with me. This is what I want you to know, is that you have a United States citizen, which is a person, which is now is a corporation, an entity, which is where they want everybody lumped, by the way. And then you had the people who had rights guaranteed and protected under the Constitution. And it's the people right here that have the rights, the people under the federal Constitution, that were not intended to have any protection by the paragraph of the amendment. So the First Amendment to the 14th Amendment, guys, does not pertain to we the people. It pertains to U.S. citizens,
Right.
U.S. citizens who are corporate in nature, who are fictions, who were created sole prop, if you want to look at it that way, who were created specifically so that they could contract with us and fleece us. We are flesh and blood men on the land and soil. We're not U.S. citizens. We're American citizens. And that is the distinction. And I hope I didn't lose any of our folks out there. But what do you guys think about all this? And then we need to think about wrapping this show up.
We agree. We agree with the discussion here. We've been telling people for years that there's a distinction. And when people would say to us, well, what about the 14th Amendment? We explained it basically in the same fashion. That Section 1 was specifically directed to the folks that were freed slaves and were looking for a pathway to citizenship. Because under that circumstance, they're persons, they're basically a different category than those of us who were born on the land and soil. We are born with our inherent rights, and our Constitution guarantees those rights to us in our Bill of Rights. Whereas the Black folks did not have that at the time. They were granted privileges and immunities, which are in no way equal to the unlimited, unalienable rights that we have secured for us in our Bill of Rights as American citizens and as citizens of our respective states. That's the difference.
What both of you have explained is not understood by at least 90% of the American people. At least 90%.
At least.
And I would probably, to give you a real figure, I'd say 97, 98%. Okay.
Realistically, yeah.
The people don't know their rights. And as we've said, and as you've said many times, Tom, if the people don't know their rights, okay, they don't have any. If they don't know their rights and they don't know how to protect their rights, they have none. All right. So people have to understand they're not you as citizens. They're not corporations. They're not vessels. Okay. They're not trading entities. They are sovereign citizens of the United States of America, not the constitutional America. I mean, not the phony constitutional corporation. Okay. By the corporate Constitution of 1871. They're citizens of the United States of America under the original organic 1787 Constitution. And that's what people have to understand. Because if the people go with a corporation jargon and the corporation positions, that's how they'll be treated. And as you say, words are very important, okay? There's a lot of game changing with words. The words that you think are correct are not correct. Like right. A lot of people call themselves pro se when they go to court. Well, as soon as you call yourself pro se, you are admitting that you are a corporate citizen subject to their jurisdiction. All right. And this is what we'll get into in depth and detail as we go along.
Just touching on that.
Yeah. We're just hitting the groundswell here.
Yeah, that's exactly right, guys. And that's why when you go to court, you are seen, folks. You are not seen as a flesh and blood man on the land with rights. You try taking that Constitution into court, not armed with any of the truth that we've given you already today. The judges said, don't bring that Constitution in here. They don't operate under the Constitution. They're an administrative military tribunal that's there for one reason. It's called profit.
Yes.
They're for-profit corporations. They're listed on Dun & Bradstreet. That's how you know they're a corporation. Dun & Bradstreet, the credit reporting companies for corporations. That's what these people are. They're not there to give you justice. You shouldn't even be there in the first place most times unless you've actually committed a crime. It's all for profit. They don't follow the Constitution, even though they've taken an oath to it. Funny how that works.
Yeah.
And you're seen, if you walk in there as a U.S. citizen and a person, that's how they're going to deal with you. Because now the U.S. person is a sole prop. It's a corporation, basically is what it is. And they're a corporation. So now they can contract with you, see? Right. And that's where they get you. That's why you always lose. But we hope that today's program has been able to shed a little bit of light about who we are, what the law actually is. And we can talk a little bit more about who the actual enemy of the American people is later. But I think you're starting to get an idea. Jack and Margie Flynn, I want to thank you for joining us. As always, Godspeed and all that good stuff. I want to remind people that they can catch us on YouTube, TO's Restoring the Republic. It's over on Rumble at TO's Republic. You'll see shorts on TikTok and Instagram and Bookface and all those. And we hope to see you again on the next broadcast. I think probably we might be talking about one of the issues out these data centers. That's something that Jack and Margie are working on out in Connecticut, and these flock cameras. Those flock cameras of what how these cops here locally, at what they've been using to unlawfully surveil me and run me down and create crimes. We're going to make sure those flock cameras go away. But in any event, thanks for joining us, my friends. We'll see you next time on
You too, Tom.
TO's Restoring the Republic. Adios, guys.
Be
Adios,
well.
Tom.
Bye-bye.